Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, November 1st, 2022 Public Works Committee meeting. Now is time for roll call and determination of quorum.
Roseland. Here. Evans. Here. Roberts.
Here.
Ham. Here. Stroman. Here. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Now is time for adoption of the agenda. I have a motion to approve by Councilman Evans, a second by Councilman Roseland. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Now it's time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. I don't have any general public comment, so I will open and close it. And we will move to consent items, items 1 through 19. And it looks like I have somebody new to speak on them today.
Well, I don't know about that. I've been here before. I do have backup in the audience in case you didn't notice.
Looks like you've got more than one.
Yeah, a couple. Well, thank you. I'll be speaking to items 1 through 16, and then I'll let Chief Culberson speak on 17, and I assume Jeff's going to speak on 18, and I know Kelly's going to speak on 19. Real quickly, running down the Public Works items. Number 2 is authorized to advertise for bids for the next phase of the 12th Street reconstruction. This one takes us from where they're ending this year at Fulton Street on farther south to Fairview. Item number 3, advertised bids for the South Truck Route Drainage Basin Design Plan Element 16 culvert crossing. That's a mouthful. This is essentially a box culvert down off Watts Lane just to the south of Catron Boulevard there. Number 4 is advertised for bids for Signal Drive in Kellogg Place. This is Signal Drive up in Star Village and Kellogg Place there, full reconstruct up there. Item number 5, water and sewer improvements for Block 13. This is a project adjacent to the 12th Street project we're completing this year. Item number 6 is the accept the quitclaim deed for Dakota Heartland Inc. and DTH LLC. This is essentially the new Homestead Street that was just opened out there off of Elkvale Road, turning the land over to the city for right-of-way. Number 7 is change order 5. This is out at the landfill on their MIPS project. It's a decrease of $120,000, final quantity adjustment for that contract. Number 8 is change order number 1. This is a change order to change the electrical boxes here with our remodel in City Hall. We have found that they need to be updated with our new heating and air conditioning system. Change order 1F, final change order for a small project we had up off of Sturgis Road for final quantities. They were able to save a bunch of the asphalt, so that helped us out there. It's a decrease of $4,600. Number 10 is the air quality permit application for the landfill. Correct, Stacy? Shake your head, yes. Okay. Requesting a signature on that. The number 11 is we have, the DOT is getting ready to rebuild the Anamosa Street Bridge up by Horace Mann School, and they need a very small temporary easement on the southwest corner. So we need authorization to sign that. Number 11 is one of the neat things. This is the joint powers agreement with the state and the county to reconstruct Deadwood Avenue from the north side of what is basically Heavy Constructor's Yard to the county line. It's a cost share between us, the state, and the county. The state will be paying 90%, the county and the city will each be paying 5%. The next one is the Eastern Slope Land Corporation in the city of Rapid City for an oversize. This is up in the Auburn Hills area for an oversize agreement to continue our water line looping up in that area to provide adequate water pressure in that area. The number 14 is the agreement for solid waste and American Engineering and Testing for their annual contract renewal for their environmental monitoring that's done continuously out at the landfill. Number 15 is the purchase of a used dozer. They went out for bids. They were both overpriced, and they've been able to negotiate on a used dozer for the landfill. Number 16 is the purchase of 2 new current model tandem axle roll-off trucks. This is actually for the Water Rec Division. We received no bids when it went out for bid, and they were able to negotiate these prices with Floyd's Truck Center. Having said that, that's everything from Public Works.
Do we have any questions on anything from the dais? Councilman Stroman?
Thank you, Chair. May I speak to, on the first item on the 12th Street reconstruction? you
Yes,
said
sir.
That was going to go up to Fairview.
Yes, sir.
Is that the end of the project?
That'll be the last phase of this portion of the, yes, so. Well, this block 13 is a part that we took out also, just so you're aware. But yeah, this is the last phase of that project.
And when's it anticipated to be complete?
We think it can be done next year.
So in 2023, that'll be completed?
Yes, sir. If I'm incorrect with that, I'll let you know, but that's the current goal.
And that's all the way to,
Fairview, yes. It's a lot easier than the last one we did. We don't have to cross Main and St. Joe.
can I ask him about another one? And then on number 8,
Yes, sir.
what's the need for change, or did we not have?
I'm going to let Rod Johnson, he's our project manager, answer that one.
So the, the project was basically replacement of all of the air handling, or almost all of the air handling units in City Hall. It was not identified at the time that the project was design bid that some of the electric panels that were feeding them were obsolete and were not able to support these new air handling units. So this replaces, I believe, 5 air handling units with new ones. There was an option, that they gave us trying to do some sub panels, things like that, which might have been a short-term solution, but then the next time we needed to do something, we'd be back in the same boat. So we felt like it was appropriate to just replace the panels.
Great. Thank you for that explanation, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Before you leave, Mr. Johnson, never seemed to function properly. First they were pneumatic, and then they put in a Wi-Fi thing, and then they put in a Bluetooth thing, and half the thermostats didn't work. I'm just curious, are we gonna have a full run-through and a test of these to make sure that all the thermostats are actually functioning and controlling the correct zone when we get done with this? Because I know that's always a problem with these big systems.
Yes, we will. I guess number one, there is, we are replacing the control system, which was, essentially original system, and these air handling units were original units. So we anticipate, and on top of that, the units do have, I believe it's 2-speed fans on them, which should help as far as the, as the control goes. It is a zone system, which we have not changed, which is pretty typical. So you may have, 5 or 6 offices on one zone. So yeah, there will need to be some, some balancing, some adjustment of that system. That's part of the contract.
And I'm hoping that we do have a little bit of local control on some of these. When we get a lot of people in the rooms, be able to adjust them up and down 2 or 3 degrees to provide some comfort, because a lot of times these things don't react in a very timely manner, and people are miserable for their thing. And another question, some of these blowers we have in this building that are out of balance and vibrating so bad that you can sit up there in a couple of rooms by the mayor's office, feel the floor shake. I think everybody's felt that. Is that whole problem going to be addressed in this project?
So, yes, we did call for isolation, vibration isolation on these units. So certainly anticipate that it's going to be improved. I'm not saying that you won't hear anything, but I get what you're saying, the way that some of those units kick on. I also think the two-speed, that variable speed is going to help also. I'm not an expert at this, I only know what they tell me, so.
So we are putting in variable speed so they don't have to run full blast all the time. They
Yes.
back up. That's good. And that's all I have for you. Thank
The
you.
controls also, I mean, pneumatic, that's pretty old, outdated. I realize that they used to have systems like that. This is also not radio. It is, it's direct wired, so.
Any other questions?
Not for him, but I do have
Go
some
ahead.
on 11.
No, go ahead.
I have a question on number 11 for the Anamosa Street Bridge project, because this is a very germinal stage, first steps and everything, correct? We, in the beautification committee, and Mr. Beegler's aware of this, we've been discussing the possibility of using that particular bridge as a gateway structure and cooperating somehow with the state to create an entrance to the city, similar to what all the other towns, whether it's Thornton, Colorado, or Sheridan, or all these people are doing. Has there been any discussion so far about co-opting and doing that so we can actually do something above the norm around here for once? If you can answer that, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The DOT is just getting going on this project. Now would be the time for someone from beautification to reach out. There will be a significant financial impact for whatever beautification is desired. So I guess that's where it sits right now.
Could you please contact Mr. Beegler and let us know what we have to do and how we can get some kind of thing going at this stage, so that in 2 years, we're not all belly aching about how we missed the boat again about something, and actually can be creative in this design and be cooperative for once rather than belly aching later. I'd appreciate it if we could do that. Keep the communication open. Thank you.
Anything else? Nope. Any other questions from anybody on? If not, we'll move on to item 17.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 17 is a request to amend a contract we've been working with FMG for our training facility out on Creek Drive. This will take the property to the portion of build, so go get bid documents and then able to build the infrastructure pieces, the parking lot and where the tower is going to sit, so.
Any questions on this item? Go ahead, Mr. Stroman.
Chair, may I address Chief Culberson?
You may.
Can you kind of give a quick rundown of why this site preparation is it's basically doubled from the original?
The original contract that we had was to take it to the preliminary design of Phase 1 and Phase 2. Once we realized we were able to get the tower going, we shifted a bunch of that money and redid their contract a year and a half ago. We've been working on this contract since 2019, I think. And we shifted that contract over to just focus in on Phase 1 and the tower. So the initial contract was really for, what the word is escaping me, but basically design the entire facility, give a conceptual design for that facility. This is now an amendment to that contract to take that particular portion to construction, which is the entrance, the parking lot, the road to the tower, and everything that needs to be done for the tower to sit on. So it's a whole nother portion of that contract. That was not included in the first contract.
Does it change your plans for the tower and everything?
No, not a bit. It's going right where it's going.
And so, but is the cost change for the tower also?
It was approved, $908,000 is what the tower was, and it should be here in June.
And that'll be in under, or at budget?
Yeah, that should come in. The part that we're not sure about now is going to bid for this portion of the project. What's the infrastructure? So hopefully we're within the engineer's estimate, which we should have back shortly, so. But we have money accounted for that.
Thank you, Chief. I yield.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to item 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 18 is a advertising authority request for the Sioux Park Tennis Court reconstruction project. This is a Vision Fund project, and we anticipate, certainly hope to be awarding this project at the first council meeting in December. And this would then have the courts not being able to be used out there for the entire year of 2023. So that'll be the length of time it's going to take to reconstruct that facility.
And do we have any questions? It looks like we do from Mr. Evans.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to make a comment that I think this project is going to turn out really, really well. I think the system they're using, I think it's post-tension concrete panels. This could provide us with tennis courts that last 30, 50 years with no cracking whatsoever. So they're going to be reasonably maintenance-free, and I think this is a really good investment. Keep in mind that not everybody plays tennis, and some people don't like this, but a lot of people don't play softball or baseball or golf or anything. We have to be a community and share so that everybody's activities are included, and I think it's a really good project. So good for the Parks Department.
Thank you. Mr. Ham.
I was just curious, is there kind of a contingency plan for folks who are playing tennis, where they can go in their neighborhoods locally?
We have a second facility, a large facility out at Parkview, and so most of the tennis will shift out there. Certainly the high school play will shift out there. We do still have tennis courts up on Quarry Park, and there are some private clubs around that do offer tennis as well. So there will be some opportunity. It will be a little more limited than before, of course, but I think everyone is aware of that, and we'll be able to take advantage of what's left and hopefully play nice together until these new courts are reconstructed.
Thank you.
And if the dais doesn't mind, I'd like to ask a quick question to Mr. Bigler. Jeff's, what was the original amount, because I can't remember off the top of my head, that was allocated from the Vision funds?
It was $3 million.
$3 million? And do we believe we're going to come in close to, and what's going to have to be removed? I'm just thinking about what's happened to the cost of concrete in the last 9 months.
Yeah, well, we're not really sure what will happen if it comes in over that. We certainly hope that it comes in lower than our engineer's estimate, of course. If not, we will have to sit down with the architects and with some of the folks that have been involved with the planning of this and see if there are items that can be removed or if it just has to be rebid at a different time.
Yeah, I don't see the concrete changing much in the near future. Yeah. And this is a project that I think is important enough that, you know, if something happens, we as council members may have to look at something to do to make sure that this project gets done. It's something that's needed to be done for a long time. I don't play tennis. I used to play tennis occasionally. We used to play out there. And, you know, 10 years ago, there were some issues out there. Right. So it has been a long time coming. I know there's a big tennis community in Rapid City, and there's a lot of people that play. And, you know, it's difficult when you're trying to move these funds around for all of these different activities. But, you know, like some of the other ones that we've recently upgraded, this is something that's needed to be done for a long time. So anyway, just my 2 cents. Thank you, and if we're done with this one, we'll move on to item 19. Oh, go ahead.
May I ask Jeff a question?
Me?
Jeff, you mentioned the alternatives while Sioux Park is under construction, and you mentioned Parkview and Quarry, and there are still courts at Wilson too, are there?
There are still courts at Wilson. However, we are planning on converting those 2 courts at Wilson into pickleball courts in this next year. So while they might be available early in the year, they probably wouldn't be available for the entire season.
Is there any other anticipated pickleball courts, or?
We are not planning any other additional pickleball courts.
It's moving pretty fast.
It sure is.
I yield. Thank you, Jeff.
Absolutely. All right, so if there's no other questions, we'll move on to item 19.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder, Kelly Brennan from Long Range Planning. I'm filling in for Vicki today. Item 19 is a request to authorize staff to advertise the LiDAR data acquisition and processing RFP. The deliverables that we're expecting on this project would be a updated digital elevation model, as well as new 2-foot contour data.
Yeah. Anybody from the dais want to speak on that? That's kind of a complicated one. It's something that's needed to be done for a long time, though, so.
The last data is from 2015, so our current contours that we're using are from then.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. So if we don't have any other questions, I will look for somebody to move to approve, or, okay, we've got a motion to approve by Councilman Ham. Second. A second by Councilman Stroman. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion passes. On to non-consent items, items 20 and 21. First, I will open public comment. I don't have anything in front of me, so I will close public comment, and we will move on to item 20, presentation and update from West Dakota Regional Water System, and we'll move on to Dale Tech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say thanks for having me today here in a different capacity. I am currently the president of the board of the Western Dakota Regional Water System. And here also today is Dr. Cheryl Chapman, who's the executive director for the Western Dakota Regional Water System. I should say, Cheryl put the presentation together, and I'll be giving it today, but we've got 16 slides to go over. I'll be very brief, and I think you'll find this quite informative. With that, let's begin. About a year ago, we were in front of the City Council to talk about the study that West Dakota Water Development District did about the viability of bringing Missouri River water to western South Dakota. And their efforts were two-pronged. The first one was they were in the midst of updating or renewing their future use permit, and decided to do a study with the School of Mines to determine whether it should be done, and the findings of that permit then drove to a different study, if you will, in 2020. And I'll be talking about both of these briefly as we move forward here. This particular slide really tells the entire story, and really was the emphasis out of the School of Mines study that really pushed West Dakota Water Development District into expanding what the ramifications were for water in western South Dakota. This is shown at every conference or presentation that we give, and kudos to the School of Mines for summarizing it in this manner. That's certainly easy to understand. So basically, we've got a graph of water demand or availability on the y-axis and the time moving forward on the x-axis. And then some scenarios about, okay, the red line represents if we have a water budget or dry years. The green line is average, and obviously the blue line is the amount of availability in really wet times. And then our demand is the black line, which turns into the dotted line going into the future, and then that cone that can represent either rapid growth or slow growth. As we all know, we are experiencing rapid growth. If you look at where we intersect the dry water budget, that time has already passed. And then moving forward, certainly if we continue rapid growth, our demand is going to outstrip our availability in the upcoming future here. So the time to act is now regarding diversifying our water sources and our plan to further investigate and implement Missouri River water to western South Dakota. This is just another data set that really solidifies the work that the School of Mines accomplished as part of their study. This goes back to 2002 in the Black Hills Hydrology Study, and once again, West Dakota Water Development District was key in having the USGS relook at the numbers and to kind of expand that around the Black Hills and even into Wyoming. And if you look at what's highlighted down in the bottom there, the consumptive use, the average is shown as 218 CFS. And then if we get into a dry period on the next set of data at the very bottom there, the lowest recharge is only 62. So that's another illustration of how our demand can easily outstrip the water supply that we have available to us here in western South Dakota. This is a recent snapshot, October 4th, 2022. This is the U.S. Drought Monitor. I think most of you have seen these graphs and charts over the years, especially when we have dry times or very wet times. It will also reflect very wet conditions. To me, the most important point of this is the graph that is, or the chart rather, that is shown in the upper right. If you look at the top line, the current conditions there, only 21% of that entire area that is shown in that map of the upper United States there, only 21% does not have some current effect of either drought or abnormally dry conditions. So once again, the region is really experiencing some dry times, and we need to make every effort to plan for that moving forward. And then this kind of is the final summary of the School of Mines study, and it illustrates very basic early estimates of what it would cost to bring water from the Missouri River to western South Dakota. The size of the pipeline isn't really what is important. It is the capacity that they can bring. Obviously 10,000 acre feet a year, and we'll get into this a little later in the presentation about volumes of water that western South Dakota has a right to in the Missouri River, or future use right to. But just to simplify things, on the left is a 3-foot pipe, cost of about or a little less than $500 million, and then a 6-foot diameter pipe was just under $2 billion. These are the current uses on the Missouri River in South Dakota. These are permits that are active and they're currently utilizing Missouri River water. The two highlighted numbers in the lower right, the first number, 134,000, that represents the current usage without irrigation. So as you can see, the total number is nearly 1 million acre feet of water a year. The bulk of that is for irrigation. The other uses, rural water, recreation, municipal fish and wildlife, equate to about 134,000 acre-feet per year. Looking towards the future, here's a list of future use permits that are active. When I say active, they have been reserved, or they're just what the term implies. They're a future use. There isn't any water, but there's 1.4 million acre-feet of water that currently holds a future use permit. This is shown by date. If you look into 1976 there, you'll see the West Dakota Water Development District obtained a future use permit for 10,000 acre-feet, and then about 3 months later, the city of Rapid City obtained a future use permit for 28,880 acre-feet. Some of you might not have a sense of how much water that is. 10,000 acre-feet is about 3.2 billion gallons of water, which is about what our annual usage is in Rapid City today. Certainly Rapid City's future use permit is roughly 3 times our current usage. So that would be a significant amount of water for future growth, and also to help other communities in our region here when this Western Dakota Regional Water System project does come to fruition. Down at the bottom, the highlighted future use permits, that just illustrates some new permits that have been issued here recently. And Rapid Valley Sanitary District was able to obtain a permit, as well as the city of Box Elder. And we certainly anticipate there will be other communities in western South Dakota that will put in their applications for future use permits for the Missouri River. Back to the big total number there of 1.4 million acre-feet. That seems like a lot of water, and it is. However, if you look at the water available in the Missouri River, it's quite literally not very much. We've got the 2 top pies and the 2 bottom pies illustrate different things, and I'll just briefly touch on those. The top 2 pies show a low flow and an average flow condition in the Missouri River. So this is all water in the Missouri River that is available in South Dakota. So this is water running in from the upstream states, North Dakota, Montana, etc. So you can see in that very first low flow pie chart, the current permitted uses is only about 7% of the water. And then if you look over on the average flow, it's only about 3%. And then our future use permits, once again, about double roughly what is currently permitted. Then if you look at the lower set of pies, that is the water that is basically produced in South Dakota. So that is water that can be attributed to water that hits the ground and runs off and ends up in the Missouri River in the state of South Dakota. So once again, if you combine the current permitted water and the future use permitted or future use permits that are out there, there's still a significant amount of unallocated water in the Missouri River. This is a snapshot of the total number of water systems, to the best of our knowledge, in western South Dakota by county. As you can see, there's a considerable number of water systems out there. Some of these are, from Rapid City water to Rapid Valley water, down to subdivisions or small groups of homes that actually have water systems. And as we continue to grow, and if we add additional systems in this area, certainly there will be competition for the water that we have available to us here in the area. And just another snapshot that shows you the value of bringing water from the Missouri River westward to not only service these systems, but also future systems that not only may, but more than likely will develop. This is kind of the second part of the West Dakota development study. Once the technical study was done by the School of Mines, West Dakota then commissioned another study, and this was during COVID times to scan stakeholders, have some informational meetings, and then kind of develop next steps in a plan. And there was a lot of great participation. There was a questionnaire sent out, I think, to nearly everyone that could be thought of to see if there was interest in bringing Missouri River water, and if their systems would be willing to participate, and also to get an idea of what their uses may be, not only currently but into the future. After that was undertaken then, rather, the report recommended, or the actions recommended, were to, for governance, which was to actually create the Western Dakota Regional Water System, and that was accomplished in September of last year. And then the technical evaluation, that kind of was going on concurrently, and that was accomplished by Banner Associates in October of 2021 last year, and then funding. So with those two first items in hand, the funding requests have started, and I'll go into that in a minute here. But that basically, we can't do anything until we get appropriate funding. And obviously, item 21 on your agenda, we'll be discussing that. Here's the current makeup of the board of directors for the West Dakota Regional Water System. As you can see, a pretty diverse group of folks. We've got 2 tribal representatives that are on the board, City of New Underwood, City of Box Elder, Jake Fitzgerald from West River Lyman Jones. So we've got a rural water system out there. And then obviously myself. So a good diverse group of folks. We will have an annual meeting coming up, which we'll talk about a little further here in the presentation, and we'll open up the membership. As part of our bylaws, we've been working on creating groups of memberships to get more communities officially involved and more skin in the game. All right, this is progress to date. Last year, roughly, I think it might have been September of last year, or maybe a little before, when the City Council authorized participation in this effort, part of the requirement was an update to the City Council. Certainly what I've talked about thus far is a bit of the history behind it, but this slide really shows what progress has been made, and what I will say is the official update to the City Council regarding what's happened. We've talked about all the items in the left-hand column throughout this presentation. In the center column, we've talked most of the way through that, although I want to, I guess, draw your attention to November 2021, and that begins our funding discussion. We were named on the state water plan as a project, and had estimated funding for that as part of the ARPA funds that the state received, and we had put in an application, I believe, for about $8 million, and were successful in obtaining that award. December 2021, we had a water summit at the School of Mines. It was very well attended. That was our very first meeting as the Western Dakota Regional Water System. Elected officers shortly after that, and have been moving forward ever since. That brings us into 2022. We went through the consultant selection process and selected a team which includes AE2S, Black & Veatch, and KLJ to be our consultants for this project. And then April 2022, we officially received the $8 million grant. And then the efforts that we've been undertaking, and primarily Cheryl Chapman deserves credit for all of this. She's been out talking to everybody and getting people interested in the project, and lining up future members for this as well. And then that takes us to this slide, which is a big, there's a lot going on this, but let's talk in columns here. So thus far, our participants shown on the left-hand side, once again, a very diverse group of folks, lots of interest from these folks. The middle panel there basically talks about our funding, where we've been and where we're going. Of course, West Dakota Water Development District was key in providing the initial funding for the School of Mines study and then a follow-up water use study to get this thing really off the ground. The South Dakota Community Foundation, they were the earliest organization that provided money to the Western Dakota Regional Water System to the tune of $20,000. So a great big thank you to them. They helped get this thing off the ground as well. The state of South Dakota, obviously, I spoke to the ARPA funding and the $8 million grant that was received back in April. And then looking towards the future, this project won't get built without a significant federal funding package. So we've been working closely with the Bureau of Reclamation, and they've been nothing but very supportive of this project. And Cheryl's been working closely with our congressional delegation to get things lined up. So if we can get consideration for federal funding, the Bureau is ready to go. And then obviously I spoke about building our membership with our meeting coming up later this year, our next annual meeting. That's when we'll really kick off the membership and dues to help cover costs that aren't covered in our grants. And then finally at the bottom of that center panel, the State Water Resource Management System SWARMS funding. Those dollars can be used for items that are not covered in the engineering. For instance, legal and administrative costs that can't be part of the ARPA grant will be eligible with the SWARMS funding. A component of that SWARMS funding, though, is to have a local match. So as it says there, we're anticipating a $1 million grant, if you will, from SWARMS funding, plus we'll need at least $250,000 in local match. And then finally on the right-hand panel, the first four organizations you see there, Pennington County, New Underwood, West River Water Development District, I'm sorry, three, they have already committed funding to the tune of $76,000 to this project. We're anticipating Elevate Rapid City will also commit funding, but also they're giving us space. Big thank you to them for giving us office space to operate out of. The School of Mines, thank you to them for what they've done. They were our first fiscal agent, basically paid the bills for us from that money received from the South Dakota Community Foundation, who I've already thanked. So that brings us kind of to a break point in this presentation where I would like to, I guess, get into the next item just a little bit, and that is to talk about the requested $100,000 from the City of Rapid City for the Western Dakota Regional Water System. As I identified, the SWARMS money has a local share with other organizations that have already committed, and I think with Rapid City's commitment to this, since we have the largest future use permit out there, I believe it's appropriate funding level for the city this year to make for this project. And then moving forward, last item I'd like to talk to you about is our next annual meeting. It will be held in New Underwood this year at the New Underwood Community Center on Tuesday, November 29th. Certainly anyone that's interested, we encourage to attend. And with that, I am finished with the presentation. I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have, and also Cheryl's here to bail me out when I get in over my head. Thank you.
Go ahead, Bill, you can start off.
No, I think this is really super important, and it's a bargain price he's asking for. Seems like I'd pay for 100 people that water their lawn like me, maybe have already paid for it. But one things and I brought this up several times, and I know Cheryl's heard me say it, and I don't know if anybody else has, but I'm a little concerned that the water we get maybe isn't being thought of as something we need to store as well. And I've talked about that project that was active back in the 70s to build a large reservoir northeast of the city. And I'm just wondering if there's any discussion with the Bureau of Reclamation about such a thing happening. Because getting the water here is one thing, but you also have to store water. And let's face it, every time we get one of these torrential cloud bursts, all that water ends up running down, turning into mud in the Cheyenne River and ending up in the Missouri, and then we pump it back. It would seem to me what they were talking about back in the 70s made a lot more sense where you store it here. We have those gigantic draws up northeast of the city that are perfect for building reservoirs. I'm just wondering if that's been part of the discussion at all.
The details of the engineering haven't even really started yet, so all aspects of water movement and storage will be considered as part of the evaluation for the project. So it's too early to tell, but certainly thank you, Mr. Evans, for your comments. And our team that we selected, they've worked on many rural water systems, regional water systems, and this will be just another thing I'm certain of that they'll evaluate.
Thank you. Mr. Stroman?
Thank you, Chair. So is your ask for $100,000 right now?
Correct.
On the next item.
On the next item, okay. So I won't make the motion yet then. So, and this is kind of follow-up on Mr. Evans' questions, and maybe they're premature. But I was just curious, several things. What would be the point of diversion from the Missouri River into this anticipated pipeline? What would be the point of delivery and storage? Would the city of Rapid City need to expand its treatment capacities in order to do this? I mean, I think this is a great and much-needed project. I'm just asking, I'm just curious, it seems so massive. And are there aquifers along the way or anything that we can bolster the water supply coming west? Or is it just all desert there? And how do we work with the Corps of Engineers and the Bureau so that the downstream states don't raise a big fuss over all this? I know that's a lot, but I've just 1,000 questions. I think it's a great and much needed project. I just am really curious. It's fascinating to me. Thank you.
I'll do my best at a couple of those. The point of diversion, the future use permits I think held thus far, say between the Cheyenne River and the Oahe Dam. So you know, that's basically the basin that we're in out here is the Cheyenne River Basin. And those future use permits are typically allocated to where the water will return to the system, I believe. So that hasn't been determined yet. Certainly, nearly all the questions you asked, Mr. Stroman, will be investigated and determined as part of the engineering effort for this project. You know, it's unlikely that it'll be raw water that will be piped out west. It'll probably have to be treated. Anytime you put untreated water inside of a pipeline, it does funky things. But once again, those are all items that'll have to be determined as part of the engineering and feasibility component to any future study. As far as the water rights for downstream states, you know, the slides I showed earlier about, you know, the current water permits and future permits, you know, Lewis and Clark is using Missouri River water. I don't know if they got into a big fight with the Corps or not. It's the state has the ability to permit the use of that water in the Missouri River. So certainly, we'll keep an eye on that. You know, the Bureau of Reclamation, obviously, they don't really get too involved in state-to-state issues, but certainly they're involved in all of these large rural water system projects, and they're in it to make it a success. So could there be some hiccups along the way? Certainly, just like with any project, but I don't personally anticipate any water rights issue with downstream states at this time. I know I forgot about half your other questions you asked, but I'll just default to say the engineering will take care of most of those technical questions.
Does that satisfy you, Greg?
It does, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ham, you've got the floor.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious, a couple quick questions, probably a little simpler than the one the list you just answered. For the city, this 100,000, what does this kind of entitle us to?
Well, once again, all these efforts for administrative, getting the water system exposed to folks in Washington, D.C., legal, it's all the administrative costs. And I guess I'll put a bow on it by saying somebody back in the 1970s in the city, I don't know who it was, had enough foresight to obtain a future use permit for 9 billion gallons of water annually. That was a very smart thing to do, and I think we not only should, but we would be remiss if we didn't do everything that we can to develop that water right to the benefit of our citizens and to this area.
It sounds like future too, right?
Yeah, for the future, yep.
And to that end, will there be, I know it's kind of a forecasting question, but would you predict that there'll be other requests like this upcoming?
I do. I believe over the next couple of years, depending upon the direction we go and the speed that we're moving, which, by the way, thanks to Cheryl's efforts, this project, this water system has been moving at light speed compared to everyone before it. So it's doing very well, and we're very optimistic. But yes, we do anticipate additional requests coming forward.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both.
I haven't spoke yet. Thank you very much. You know, the talk everywhere is about this right now. Everywhere I go, people are talking about this, and I think it's going to be amazing if it comes to fruition, which I hope it does. My question is, federal funding, what percentage of federal funding do we need to have before we go forward on this?
Well, we'll get through most of we should be able to get through the design, a good portion of the design with state monies. There'll be a lot more required towards the end if the project, but it's going to have to be nearly all federally funded to build the project, in my estimation. Cheryl, does that?
You know, look, one other question. Okay, that answers a lot of my questions, but if you look at the amount of water that's allocated, Rapid City's portion, let's say 95% of it is funded, okay? So there's $300 million left that needs to be funded by, you know, this cooperative. Rapid City's portion of that, I'm guessing, would be somewhere around 25%, 30%, because we're the largest user.
That's all yet to be seen. So as far as allocating costs to individual users or individual organizations, we're way too early in the game to even speculate that. You know, a $2 billion project, we're going to need $1.7 billion of federal funding to make the project happen. So out of that additional 200 or 300 million, it's difficult to know how that will all be allocated. And we're talking from Missouri River all the way to, we're going to have users along the entire system.
Well,
so.
you know, one of the things that you said is the fact the water is going to be treated before it's pumped. So the city of Rapid City, we know somewhere in the future, in the near future, we're going to need another, you know, water treatment plant. So if that's the case, that puts a lot of money on Rapid City's side that could go into this somewhere in the future. So anyway, I think it's a great project. I look forward to as much information on it as possible, just because of the fact of all the questions that I get on this from people. So I thank you for doing this presentation. I think it's been great. I think it's going forward. We all should keep our fingers crossed that this project does go forward. So if there's nothing else from either side of the dais? Now you can make a motion. We have a motion to acknowledge by Councilman Evans, a second by Councilman Ham. All in favor? All opposed, motion passes. We'll move on to item 21, funding request from West Dakota Regional Water System in the amount of $100,000. Have a motion to approve by...
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Finance isn't here today, so they're going to say, well, where are you going to pay for it from? So if the motion could include to pay for this out of the water fund, would be appropriate.
Absolutely. We'll add that to that. I just took it as a, I figured that's where it was coming from. So if we've had that added to the motion, we have a motion by Councilman Stroman, a second by, I can't remember who was, Mr. Evans. Sorry, I forgot about you so quickly. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion passes. Thank you, Dale.
Thank you.
We have a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor? Thank you.
You look at me and I just say it.
Move to something.